They say fire doesn't feel pain. Lies. I felt every second of it. The concrete yard chewed my knees the way a bad memory chews your sleep. Slow, grinding, without mercy. Dawn hadn't bothered to be pretty. It was all wet steel and diluted sky, the air heavy with the smell of rain and iron and 20 bodies pushing past their limits. My ribs flared like lit matches every time I breathed. Blood salted my tongue. Someone's boot thudded close to my ear, then moved on. On your feet, Reeves. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It cut through the scrape of shoes and the barked counts from assistant coaches. When I looked up, the first thing I saw was the line of his stance. Heels anchored, shoulders square, hands behind his back. Military everywhere you looked. The economy of motion, the stillness that read as threat only if you'd learned to read it. Instructor Jayden Hale. Up close, he was all long, dry muscle and deliberate, calm steel-gray hair clipped mercilessly short. Eyes the color of burnt amber under a sky that couldn't decide if it was going to rain again. If an aura could have temperature, his ran cold and blue. Cold fire, the kind that didn't flare, it cauterized. If you can stand, he said, stand. If you can't, leave. This isn't a place for people waiting to be coddled. There wasn't contempt in it. Worse. There was nothing in it. The words fell like a rule he'd written on a wall. I planted my palms. Concrete bit skin. My elbows shook. Every instinct screamed to roll and protect the ribs I'd cracked in week 3 at Station 19 and pretended I hadn't. But instincts got you killed on a ladder if you let the wrong ones drive. I pushed. Breathing was noise made of glass. I got one foot, then the other, and pretended standing was easy. Reeves is up, someone muttered behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't give anybody that ground. Not on day 1. Line, Hale said. We formed it, 20 of us in a ragged row, 19 alphas cut from. Different factories, broad-shouldered, quick to crowd space, and me. The lone Omega, in a program that wasn't designed for us. It never had been, no matter what the brochure said about merit and grit and elite service integration. Stage 2, an assistant called. Sprint resist, 4 lengths. Pair off. Hale's gaze moved down the line and paused on me. Not long enough to be hostile, not short enough to be accidental. Reeves. With Kern. A few snickers slid around the yard. Kern. Alpha. All swagger and shoulders. The kind of guy who would aim for your bruise and call it a joke. He rolled his neck and grinned, like he'd been handed dessert. We crouched at the line. The whistle cracked. Kern exploded forward, drag harness between us yanking hard, my job to drive against his resistance, legs churning, lungs burning. My shoes bit water-slick concrete, my calves threatened mutiny. Kern put his full weight into the lean, testing. The strap dug into my hips. I kept pace. Come on, little dog, Kern said over his shoulder, not even breathless. Heel. I smiled because my father taught me a smile is a blade if you angle it right. I don't heel, I said. I bite. I drove harder. At the second length he stopped sandbagging and tried to jackknife me, a quick snap to send me sliding. The yard tilted. My ribs turned white behind my eyes. I caught myself with a hand. To the ground. And popped back up before my brain remembered we don't do that. Kern laughed. Hale didn't call foul. He watched like a scientist with a clipboard only he could see. Again, Hale said when we finished, and we reset. By the 4th set my thighs quivered, my chest sawed and the edges of the world fuzzed. I didn't look at the clock. Clocks are how you quit in installments. We broke at last, the assistant tossing a curt, hydrate, like water would fix personality flaws. I took enough to swish the copper from my mouth, then poured the rest down my neck. It steamed off me in the morning chill. That wasn't just exertion, it was my flame, running too hot beneath the skin. Omega flame's a bastard to manage. It wants to flare, outshine, impress, then it collapses on itself and leaves you shaking. Most departments keep us away from the front because of it. They say it's liability. They mean they don't trust a fire that isn't theirs. Reeves, Hale said. I straightened without thinking. Habit. He looked at my hands. Tape your knuckles. You split skin on the fall. I'm fine, sir. Fine is a story you tell people so they stop looking. Tape up, I should have said yes. I didn't. With respect, sir, if I stop now the rib noise will get louder. A line flickered at the corner of his mouth. Not amusement, not annoyance. Calculation. Then you mismanaged the first evolution. Pace for the day, not the rep. He turned away. That should have made it easier to breathe. It didn't. The rest of the morning was grit disguised as curriculum. Stair climbs with weighted packs, hose advances, hand-to-hand checks to simulate extraction in tight quarters. I held my own. I didn't dominate. That wasn't the assignment. Survival was. My shoulders burned clean. My ribs howled. At one point I saw Kern coming at me again in a drill, and braced for the little extra he saved for me. It didn't come. Hale's shadow moved across the ground, and Kern's better sense kicked in. Or maybe it was the look Hale gave him. No heat, no anger. Just a colder kind of warning that says, try me. By the time the final whistle blew, the sky had decided to be daylight. The yard smelled like hot coin and wet canvas. We filed toward the sheds where someone had put out oranges that tasted like rescued sun. I peeled mine with shaking fingers and ate the bitter pith because it was there. Taryn found me on the bench, shorter than me by an inch, a lean beta with a mouth that never asked permission. He flopped down like gravity liked him more than the rest of us. You're insane, El. Good morning to you too, I said, and bit into the orange like it had insulted my mother. He jerked his chin toward Hale, who was conferring with an assistant, posture a straight line against the day. You see him? He watches like he's running calculus on your afterlife, time of death. 'Cause what you'll wear to the funeral. At least someone's planning my schedule, I said. Takes the pressure off. Taryn's grin flashed. You joke when you're scaring me. That mean you're fine? Fine is a story I tell people, I said, because if he was going to quote Hale at me, I could return the favor. Taryn snorted. Cute. For the record, he has a reputation. Which one? The accurate one. He breaks habits, not people. But sometimes people cling to their habits like they're some kind of heirloom. Things get messy. I looked down at my palms. The tape I hadn't applied wasn't there to hide the raw. Messy and I have history. Yeah, he bumped my shoulder. Light. Speaking of history, are you going to talk about the thing? What thing? The fact that this is the same guy who... He cut himself off as Hale's gaze skimmed in our direction. Taryn cleared his throat. Never mind. We cannot talk about the thing. I remembered the thing without help. I'd been 20 and stupid, and on fire in the way of kids who think their flame is the first to burn. The academy had a pilot program. Omega integration, high-performance protocols. Big words to armor the small truth that we were an experiment. On day 12, an evolution went sideways. Too many egos in a small space. Too much flair and not enough control. Someone pushed. Someone else pushed back. Heat leaped. The room breathed wrong. I'd been the one who took it into my lungs and woke up with a week missing. My training file stamped with a code that might as well have read. Liability. The program shuttered. The instructors scattered. The one I remembered most had eyes like banked coals and a voice that didn't rush. I hadn't seen him again, until I'd walked into the city's elite training yard this morning and found the same voice wearing a different insignia, writing rules on the air like scripture. Same man, new stakes. I didn't know if it was fate or a bad joke from the part of me that liked making things hard. Hey, Taryn said. You're doing the 1,000-yard stare. Dial it back 100, maybe 2. I signed up, I said. I noticed. For this, I lifted my chin toward the yard. Not for ghosts. Taryn followed my look to Hale and made a face. He looks very corporeal to me. Unfortunately, I said, and that almost made Taryn laugh his water out his nose, which would have improved my day. We were dismissed with a list of times and expectations. Hale didn't chase us down to deliver personal notes. He didn't need to. The yard was a note, written in bruises. I showered in water that ran gray for longer than felt normal and dressed, slow to convince my ribs I wasn't actively trying to harm them. When I stepped back into the daylight, the city had fully woken. Sirens, far off, buses exhaling, the skyscrapers throwing silver at the river. Hale stood at the edge of the yard like he belonged to the concrete. For a second I thought about walking over. I didn't owe him anything. He didn't owe me an explanation for a decade-old ruin I kept under my tongue like a coin. Still, the old echo rang, the one that said, ask him why. Why he stayed when the program burned. Why his name was still in rooms that didn't want mine. I started to move. He looked up first. No nod, no smile, no approval. His face didn't give me the grace of a readable line. But something behind the amber shifted, like a pilot light catching a thread of gas, a small, disciplined spark that didn't care if I noticed. I noticed. I lifted a hand. Not a salute, not exactly, more like a promise that I'd be back on that line tomorrow and the day after until the story. I told people, I'm fine, stopped being a lie I used to keep them from, looking and started being something I didn't have to say out loud. He didn't raise his hand. He didn't have to. The spark was enough. And if my ribs burned a little less on the walk to the barracks, well, maybe fire feels more than the stories say. Maybe sometimes it learns. Maybe sometimes it learns me. The training hall was a box of concrete and breath. Gray walls, gray floor, gray morning light, cut by the spinning blades of ceiling fans that shoved hot air around like it owed them rent. Chalk dust hung in lazy veils near the mirrored wall. The smell was a recipe I was learning by heart. Magnesium, rubber mats, old sweat, new adrenaline. We were in pairs again. Of course we were. Pair drills were the program's love language. Resist, yield, redirect, recover. Do it 1,000 times until your body remembered before your pride could argue. Reeves, an assistant called, clipboard voice carrying. With Kyle turned like his name was a spotlight. 6'2", built like a door you don't knock on. Aggressive shoulders, expensive sneer. His hair was the particular black that glossy magazines call ink, and his eyes were the easy shade of a bruise. He smirked, sharp and practiced. Oh good, he said. I was worried I wouldn't get my cardio. Think positively, I said. This way, you'll finally meet your personality. Snickers cut and died. It wasn't that I wanted to pick a fight. It was that Kyle had already picked me to be beneath him. Omega logic he never had to think about. If I had to choose between taking space and taking air, I was going to take space. We faced off on the mats, bare feet finding grip on scuffed rubber. The drill was simple. Neutralize a shove, turn it into a lock, get to your feet. Simple the way fire is simple, take in, put out, try not to become the thing you can't control. Begin, Hale said from somewhere behind us. He didn't raise his voice. He never did. The words slid along the wall and sat in my ear like an order I'd already obeyed. Kyle moved first, arms wide to corral, then a fast push at the sternum meant to unbalance. I took it, let my heel skim, then twisted and set my shoulder into his forearm the way we drilled yesterday. He grunted, surprised, and I almost smiled. Almost as a dangerous hobby. He came back harder. His shove was a wave. My body tried to surf it, and only half remembered how. I went down on palms, rolled through, came up low, hand on his wrist to turn, his momentum into a lock that never got the dignity of fully clicking. He jerked free. I stayed on my feet. Again, Hale said. We circled. The fans hummed judgment. I watched Kyle's shoulders more than his hands. Shoulders tell truths hands try to hide. He telegraphed left and went right, a cheap feint with a mean delight. I ate floor, bounced, and was up before my ribs could protest in longhand. Persistence isn't strength, Reeves, Hale said without looking at anyone else. I wiped sweat from my mouth. No, I said. But it's not passivity either. A low sound moved through the alphas. I didn't need to see who made it. Surprise, annoyance, amusement. All the same color if you stand in the wrong light. Hale's gaze grazed me and moved on, like I wasn't a problem yet. Reset. We did. For 10 minutes, Kyle pushed like he was trying to move the building, and I redirected like the building was not part of my business plan. He liked to add the little nothings that turned drills into dominance. A forearm pressed a second longer than necessary. A foot slid into the arch of mine to steal balance. A chuckle ghosted at my ear. None of it was technically out of bounds. That was the artistry of it. The 11th minute he stopped being artistic and used his full weight. I went over flat, knocked breath spilling. The mat was a sound in my teeth. My body wanted to curl and call it strategy. I made it long instead, hand finding his elbow, hips rolling, legs scissoring to send him off my center line. We separated. I stood. Kael's grin sharpened. You bounce nicely. Occupational hazard, I said. You fall enough? You learn where the floor keeps its soft spots. Floor doesn't have soft spots. Exactly. Again, Hale said. He was a metronome. Tick. Again. Tick. Again. By the hour mark, sweat made my skin a second skin. My hands shook between reps the way hands do when you've lied to your arms about what they can keep doing. Chalk dust bloomed where belts slapped the mat. The mirrors had stopped reflecting us and started reflecting heat. Kael's face stayed infuriatingly handsome. Mine felt arranged by committee. We broke for water. I stood near the mirrored wall and studied the red in my cheeks, the way it sat under my skin like a second pulse. The scar along my left collarbone, old ladder kiss healed ugly, looked pale against the flush. The room behind me showed Hale in long satellite passes, always moving, always still. He watched Kael talk to a knot of alphas like he could hear the shape of their words. Reeves, he said when I set the bottle down. On the bag. Yes, sir. The heavy bag waited like a patient. I rapped too fast. My fingers trembled over the last loop. I tugged it tight and pretended I hadn't fumbled. The first punch wasn't a punch so much as an apology to my knuckles for the ones that would follow. Then I found a rhythm. 1, 2, breath, 2, 3, breath. Check the wrist, correct the shoulder, breathe again. The bag thumped and thumped and thumped. A heartbeat not mine. The world narrowed to the small kindness of repetition. I didn't notice Hale until the towel hit me in the chest. White, clean, institutional. You're exhausting your body to make a point, he said. That isn't courage. That's stupidity. I caught the towel more out of reflex than respect. My lungs tried to decide if they were offended or flattered. Then you're the ideal instructor, I said, breath stitching the words together. I specialize in the latter. The corner of his mouth didn't move. His eyes did. Tape your wrists properly. You'll need them tomorrow. He started to step away, then added, like an afterthought he'd planned hours ago, and stop watching Kael. I wasn't. You were, he said, not unkindly. Watch the work, not the audience. He walked on. I watched the work. By late afternoon we were bones wearing sweatshirts, the class released, to the locker room with the kind of mercy that pretends it's discipline. The showers hissed and chattered, a battalion of faucets losing their tempers. Steam turned the room into an unconvincing cloud. I let hot water pound my neck until it apologized for existing. Taryn was already dressed, which meant he'd cheated the shower gods by moving faster than anyone with a pulse should. He sat on the bench tying a boot and shook his head when I dropped beside him. You and that bag, he said. Did it insult you personally? Or are you starting a long-distance relationship? I tried to break up, I said, toweling off. It said we should see other fists. You're hilarious, Taryn said. And by hilarious I mean terrible at not bleeding. He eyed my wrists. You rapped crooked. I rapped fast, I said. It was a time-efficient mistake. He glanced toward the far end where Kael held court, laughing with 2 other alphas like a magazine spread on teamwork. If you ever want me to trip him in the hall, blink twice. I don't pick fights I'm not going to win, I said. Is that why you picked this program? I'm not picking the program, I said. I'm picking me. Taryn made a face that wanted to be a smile, but settled on respect. Rumor says Hale once burned a whole squad down during an evolution, he said conversationally. Not literally, like not with, actual fire, but with whatever he does. His cold burn thing. Rumor says a lot of things, I said, pulling on my shirt slow, because the shirt had decided to negotiate terms with my ribs. This one's from a guy who graduated last year, Taryn insisted. He said Hale took away all their habits in one day, yanked the crutches, no enabling, no adjustments. People panicked, half the class washed out. The other half came back the next morning meaner, cleaner, taller. The phrase he used was cauterized. Cold fire. Cauterize a wound and it stops bleeding, but you carry the mark forever. I pictured a hallway of cadets, flesh and pride smoking, and Hale standing at the end with clean hands. It shouldn't have interested me. It did. You're thinking about it, Taryn said. I'm thinking about oranges. I lied. And about how the towels here feel like they used to be sand. Sure, he said. And I'm thinking about becoming a pastry chef. He slung his bag up. Come on. Rec lounge before lights. I want to watch you pretend to like that protein bar with the texture of regret. The lounge was a rectangle with ambitions, vending machines humming, 2 couches that had survived a war, and a TV bolted high where the news tried to convince us the city wouldn't be on fire without us. The air conditioner clicked like a metronome with a personality disorder. We claimed a corner. Taryn tore a wrapper. I tried not to imagine chalk dust in my lungs turning into plaster. You ever going to ask him? Taryn said after a few minutes of chewing noises. Ask who what? Hale. About the academy. About that program. I watched the TV show, a parade of politicians shaking hands with firefighters like we were a prop you can applaud. No. Why not? Because I don't want his answer to be for me, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. If I do this, I do it on my legs. If he's part of it, he's part of it. But I don't want to hold on to his yes if I can't survive his no. Taryn whistled, low, deep. Shut up. Respectfully. He bumped my knee with his, then leaned his head back and closed his eyes like he trusted the couch not to bite. I didn't. I watched the room instead. Alphas decompressed in packs, laughter coming off them in warm waves. A couple of betas traded massage gun time like stock options. In the mirrored wall across from us, the room doubled itself into infinity, a receding file of movement and light. Hale walked through the reflection first. He always did, appearing where my eyes landed, as if my attention had been a quiet invitation he declined by accepting. He passed behind our couch without stopping, spoke to an assistant near the door, took a note, gave none. The mirror caught him at an angle the real room didn't, a sliver of face and the clean line of his shoulder. His aura, if you believed in that as anything more than a word for a feeling, ran tight to his skin, cool as shadow against stone. I should have looked away first. I didn't. The reflection had a gravity I couldn't name. He paused by the far wall and adjusted the timer for tomorrow's rotations. The glass gave me the courtesy of a private view, the small focus of his eyes, the way his mouth went even when he counted. Then, subtle as the click of the AC, his gaze slid to the mirror. Not to me, not head-on, to the act of seeing itself. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. The burnt amber look found the line of the reflection and touched it. Something in my chest answered. Not heat, not lightning. The thinner spark that lives inside a pilot light and waits for gas. For a beat, the slick surface of the mirror held 2 fires that refused to flare. His held back, like a promise he wouldn't break before I asked. Mine, skittish and stubborn and alive anyway. The glass didn't fog, but it could have. The air might have moved. The AC clicked. Taryn snored once, delicately, like punctuation. Hale looked away. The pilot light in my ribs didn't. Don't say it, I told Taryn when he cracked an eye open. Say what? That I was staring. He yawned. You weren't staring, he said. You were calibrating. Great, I said. Add that to my list of bad habits. Taryn grinned around a crumb. Maybe he'll cauterize it. Maybe I'll make him try, I said, and somewhere behind the glass, the faintest thread of blue flame agreed. The locker room at night could have been a different building. The day version was all echo and bodies and orders ricocheting off tile. The night version had its voice turned down. Fluorescence hummed like insects behind frosted covers. Cold light washed the rows of metal lockers in a color that made everything look honest and a little sick. The showers muttered to themselves, a drip here, a hiss there, like old pipes remembering better water. I came because my body didn't know what else to do with itself. The late session had been a grind layered on a grind, Kyle still finding ways to make drills. Into contests, I wasn't supposed to win, and me still refusing to play the part he wanted. My wrists throbbed where I'd wrapped them wrong. My ribs had gone from complaint to litany. Hands shook in a rhythm that wasn't entirely fatigue. Flame does that when you don't shelve it properly. It paces under the skin like an animal in a cage, wearing the same line in your nerves, promising it'll be calm as soon as you let it out. It lies beautifully. I turned the first handle. The pipe coughed, then offered water that stung like an apology. I stepped under, let it run hot until the top layer of me argued and lost. Heat climbed my spine. The tile was slick under my feet. The air thickened into a cheap fog that made the fluorescent hum sound farther away. I braced palms against the wall and bowed my head. Steam kissed the back of my neck and turned into little rivers. My breath dragged. It felt like the kind of prayer you learn by accident, please. Enough. I didn't hear the door open over the water. I felt the shift instead, the way rooms tilt when a presence with gravity steps inside. Footsteps softened by rubber soles. A pause. Then another step. I looked over my shoulder. Jayden Hale stood just inside the doorway, not far enough to be presumptuous, not far enough to be accidental. Civvies, dark t-shirt, track pants, the same straight spine that made even casual look like a salute. Night cut his features into sharper lines. Those burnt amber eyes didn't glow. They didn't need to. They found me, the line of me under the water, and held. We stared like amateurs at a contest with no rules. The light made the steam into a veil. He didn't move. Neither did I. The whole room reduced itself to breath and the tick of water striking tile. I didn't ask him to stay. I couldn't say for him to go. A lot of things were true at once. I was exhausted. I was hurting. I was angry. Underneath all of that, something bright and stupid was lifting its head to look at him. Something that had nothing to do with heat or rank or biology, and everything to do with how you find a person at the end of a hard day, and they don't look away. He approached slow enough to be read as a question. I didn't answer, which is an answer. He stopped just short of the line where heat starts to claim new territory. Drops from my showerhead threw themselves off his shoulder and broke on the floor between us. You keep the fire too close to the skin, he said. His voice had lost its yard bark, shed down to something quieter that knew how tile holds sound. It'll burn you. At least I won't freeze, I said, because humor wears my fear like a coat, and I wasn't about to stand naked in front of him in any sense of the word. One corner of his mouth might have thought about moving. There's a difference between warmth and fever. He wasn't staring at my body in a way that made it an object. He was staring like a medic at a patient, like a firefighter at a wall already hot to the touch. Assessment first. Intervention last. What do you want, instructor? I said. The steam made the title sound like two words. To see if you were going to fall, he said. I'm vertical. For now. We let the water talk again. Drops hit the tile and made music of patience. I swiped hair out of my eyes and felt the tremor go through my forearm. He noticed. He always noticed. The room was a grid. He saw where every line met. Turn it down, he said, nodding at the handle. I like it this hot. You like the penance. I like proof, I said, heat flaring even under the heat, because he was not wrong, and I hated when people weren't wrong about me. I like knowing I can take what I chose. His gaze held, steady as a level. You chose this. You didn't choose the lie that says pain alone is proof. The steam between us shifted. No, not the steam. The air, a shimmer like heat above asphalt on a July road. Except it was January, and we were under institutional lighting, and the only thing making mirage was us. His cold-schooled aura met my reckless one in the space between our chests and the air. Did what it has to do in an argument between opposites. It tried to hold them both. The shower water hiccuped against my shoulder. For a second, the drops where his aura reached went a hair shy of boiling, then thought better of it. A mild, indecent fizz slid down my sternum. I startled. He didn't. Of course he didn't. It does that, he said, as if we'd just noticed a leak in the ceiling, and not the physics of something we weren't naming. When two flames stop pretending the other doesn't exist, I wanted to ask if that had happened to him before. I wanted, viciously, to be the first thing that surprised him in a long time. Instead, I turned my face back into the water, so he couldn't read what it wrote across my mouth. Hard day? He asked after a moment. You were there, I said. I was, he said. I also want to hear you say it. The steam made me honest. I wanted to break his smile. Kyle's smile exists to be broken. It's how he knows he's real. Don't give him the favor. Is that in the manual? I said. It's in a manual, he said. Mine. Must be nice, I said, writing the rules. It's my job to enforce the ones that keep you alive, he said. The problem is the ones you're enforcing on yourself. I blew out air and watched it make an idiot little fog that the room didn't need help with. What am I enforcing? That you have to win every moment or you're losing the whole story, he said without hesitation. That if you're not bleeding for it, it doesn't count. That the only good use for tenderness is to outlaw it. That last one's dramatic, I said, which was me saying, stop being right, it's expensive. He stepped closer. Not enough to make contact, enough to make the heat do another strange thing in the air. It was like a new weather system formed where his cool met my hot, a front, a line. The drops on my forearm trembled. I'm not going to touch you, he said. I want you to know that. My heart did a small, stupid leap I tried to stomp out by thinking purely practical thoughts about water pressure and grout. Why tell me then? Because you're waiting for the rule, he said. This is the rule. When you're ready to yield, you'll say so. I'm not going to take it. I'm going to make you want to give it. Yield. The word fluttered something in me I didn't want named. It wasn't the cheap version people put on Omegas and call instinct. It was the specific kind that comes after a fight with someone who sees where you're strongest and refuses to break it. The kind that only works if you choose it and can choose it again. I'm not a project, I said. Quiet. I don't train projects, he said. I train firefighters. I'm an Omega, I said, because sometimes you have to lay a card down that the table already knows you're holding. I noticed, he said dryly. Do you think that's why I'm here? Isn't it? I asked, almost daring him to lie, because lies are kinder in the short term and I was craven for that kind of mercy even while I despised it. No, he said simply. I'm here because you're mismanaging a resource I can see, and because I don't want to watch it eat you. Water ran. Air shook. My hands had stopped shaking only because all of me had started. Not fear. Not entirely. Something bright under the bones, trying to be seen without burning the house down. He looked at my wrists. You rapped better this afternoon. You were watching, I said, before my caution could put a filter on it. I watch the work, he said. A beat. You are the work. It shouldn't have felt like permission. It did. He nodded at the handle again. Turn it down. My fingers hesitated, then moved. The water slid from scald to merely hot, then to a heat I would have called reasonable in any other mood. The skin over my ribs sighed in relief. The room felt less like an argument and more like an apology. There, he said. You won't dissolve. You don't know that, I said. I do, he said. And the certainty was so casual it almost made me mad again. The fluorescent hum tripped over itself. Somewhere in the locker rose a door settled in its frame. The moment had the soft sound of a weight being set down. Mine, his, I didn't know. He stepped back a fraction, the aura collision quieting with him. The little fizz on my chest smoothed into a simple line of water. Breathing got easier. That felt like betrayal and blessing in the same breath. He tipped his head, something like approval passing through the lines of his face so quickly I might have imagined it. Don't come here to punish the body, he said. Come here to clean it. Yes, sir, I said. It came out without resentment. That surprised me more than anything else. He took 2 steps toward the door, then looked back without turning his shoulders, just a glance along the line of his cheek. The cold fire of him pulled tight again, a sheath over something potential. When you're ready to surrender, he said softly, almost as if he were talking to the tile so I could overhear, you'll say it. I won't take it. I'll make you want it. The room heard it. My pulse heard it. Every stubborn part of me lined up to argue and found nothing to stand on. Yield is only a sin if you confuse it with defeat. I held my breath long enough to feel stupid, then let it go. He left without ceremony. The door sighed back into place. The echoes he carried with him folded up and put themselves away. I stayed under the water until my skin couldn't tell me which drops were new. The tremor in my hands came back, smaller now, like a pilot light adjusting after a draft. I braced my palms against tile that had seen every version of exhaustion and didn't judge. I let the heat be warmth instead of weapon. The room smelled like metal and soap and a little bit like the air before lightning, which is unfair because nothing had struck. I wasn't shaking from fear. Not exactly. It was closer to the tremor you get when someone says your name in a way that makes the syllables fit. It's unsettling to be looked at and not managed. It's worse to realize you want more of it. Steam thinned. The fluorescent hum settled into a note I could live with. I turned the water off and listened to the last drops give up their hold on the showerhead. Maybe fire does feel pain. Maybe it feels everything, and that's the problem. Maybe the trick isn't to become stone or to let the burn name you. Maybe the trick is to learn where to hold it, and who you are when someone steps close and doesn't take it from you. I dried off slow. My fingers didn't fight the towel. When I dressed, my shirt found my ribs without argument, and the ache didn't argue back as loud. The mirror above the sinks returned a version of me that hadn't changed, and knew it had. The pilot light in my chest burned a clean, contained blue. On the way out, I palmed the door and paused, listening for footsteps in the corridor, telling myself it was about safety. It wasn't. I wanted a second gravity. I wanted the room to tilt again. It didn't. I smiled at myself because I'm that kind of idiot, then killed the light and let the hall swallow me. Warmth followed. Not fire. Not yet. Something under the skin with patience enough to wait for me to be ready to call it by name. The day after the shower felt like walking around with a word I hadn't meant to say still hanging in the air between us. Jayden was everywhere he always was. Yards ahead of us, a voice cutting clean through noise, a stillness that bent other movements around it. And yet he was also not where my eyes kept looking. He didn't avoid me. He made not avoiding into an art. His corrections came the exact same way they always had, precise and impersonal. Like he could assemble a better version of me without ever touching the parts. I hated that it made me want to do the work cleaner, just to see if he'd step closer. By lights out, the knot in my throat had turned into a full personality. I stared at the ceiling of the barracks and rehearsed all the versions of I wasn't. And you shouldn't have, and that rule you made isn't a rule for me. They all sounded like the wrong guy trying to pick a fight with a wall. I rolled over. The wall won. Night duty saved me from my own brain. Taryn and I drew the late watch for the rec floor. Make sure the vending machines survived the evening. The coffee machine didn't unionize, and no one tried to practice grapples on the couches. Midnight painted the city on the far windows. Wet streets, a thin ribbon of river light, neon that looked tired of its own color. The rain had started up again. Not a storm, just the kind of steady that polishes the world to a sullen shine. Taryn kicked his feet up on the table and opened a protein bar with the solemnity of a man unwrapping a confession. My sources have sources, he said around the first chew, and you are not going to like this. I don't like most things, I said. It's a hobby. He leaned in. Omega reinforcement. The name hit like a hallway going quiet. That a new energy drink? It's the dead program, he said. The one they shut down at the academy after your pause in the historical record. I swallowed hard enough to count as an exercise. I know the program. Do you know our fearless instructor built it? Taryn asked, eyebrows doing their best impression of a surprise party. As in, designed the framework, wrote the protocols, fought the board for the pilot. He doesn't just have history with it. He is the history. My chest went strange. Not hurt, not heat. The third thing that makes you sit up very still so your insides don't spill. Your sources, grad last year, older beta, the kind who tells stories like he's filing after action, Taryn said. He said Hale wanted to test whether Omegas could carry the same load if you trained the flame first, body second. The board wanted PR. The cadets wanted to be first. It was a three-way tug. Guess who snapped? I stared at the rain. They broke. They were broken. Taryn amended quietly. That's the story I heard. Wrong metrics, wrong pace, wrong incentives. He tried to stop it. He couldn't. The program ate itself. and the board fed it to politics. And you're telling me this because you like to fight walls, he said. And if you're going to pick one, maybe choose the right wall. He pushed a paper cup toward me. Coffee machine brew, suspiciously hot. Steam curled off it like a flimsy spirit trying to look important. Let's get air, I said. We left the lounge to the hum of machines and climbed 2 flights in a stairwell that smelled like limestone and old ambition. The roof door cried at us and gave in. Outside, the training center's rooftop was a plain of wet concrete, interrupted by vents and the stubborn shapes of maintenance sheds. The city lay out like a patient, arteries of headlights, the slow blink of river buoys, glass towers catching thin neon like it might be contagious. Rain stitched small needles into my hair. We stood under the lip of an HVAC housing and tried to drink coffee like it was a plan. Taryn watched me watch the sky. You're going to go talk to him, he said. I haven't decided. I lied. You have a meeting scheduled with your worst ideas, he said. Text me if they try to unionize. He clapped my shoulder and left me with 2 cups and a decision. The roof felt like the top of a story that refused to end where the author wanted. Jayden found me before I found him. He rounded the shed, hoodless rain flattening his hair into something softer than his face allowed. T-shirt soaked dark at the shoulders. Track pants turned 2 shades heavier at the knees. He didn't look surprised to see me. If anything, he looked inevitable. Reeves, he said. Hale, I answered, and hated that my mouth made it sound like a greeting. We stood there with 2 cups between 3 hands like a math problem. I offered one. He took it. The cheap lid made a plastic complaint. I hear you like rooftops, I said, because I needed to say something that didn't sound like an accusation I hadn't earned yet. I like distance, he said. It lets you see the pattern before the people. That's supposed to be comforting? No, he said. It's supposed to be honest. There was an awkwardness, but it wasn't the fragile kind that makes you want to back up. It was the sturdy kind you can sit on. Rain ticked. The HVAC exhaled a warm ghost every few seconds. The city's pulse pulled even with mine. You were there, I said, looking at the lights, because looking at him felt like standing too close to an open oven. At Omega Reinforcement, yes, he said. You knew they were breaking, I said. I knew they were breaking them wrong, he said, and I couldn't get in front of it fast enough. I turned to him. Water made his lashes darker. He sipped the coffee like it was punishment he deserved. You built it, I said. It came out halfway between accusation and prayer. It was yours. It was my framework, he said. My mistake was thinking I could protect it from what people wanted to use it for, which was proof, he said, flat and soft at once. Proof that marketing was right. Proof that biology could be bullied. Proof that the board's money had bought a miracle. You wanted proof too, I said. I wanted process, he said. I wanted to see if training flame first, breathwork, boundary setting, thermal regulation, could give Omegas a safe path to load. I wanted to build the scaffolding before we asked anyone to climb. I laughed once, harsh and too honest. And instead, they built a diving board over a concrete pool, he said, and asked cadets to believe. Rain ran off the brim of my skull like a decision I wasn't ready to make. You couldn't stop it, I said. I tried, he said. Too late, too loud. I got it shuttered. That's not the same as saving it. And now? I asked. He looked out at the city. For a moment I saw the shadow of a younger version of him, more arrogant maybe, less precise, still trying to hold a thing in his hands that wanted to be bigger than hands. Now I work where I can, he said. Quiet, slow, not marketable. On me, I said. His gaze cut back, direct. With you, he corrected. If you let it be. The line snagged something in me that had been drifting too close to self-pity. I don't want to be an experiment. You aren't, he said, simple. You're an exception. That's different. Is it? I asked, bitterness taking a breath I hadn't meant to give it. Exceptions change rules, he said. Experiments serve them. We stood with that a bit. It settled near my ribs and tapped the scar like a friend who was worse for me than they were bad. You can't fix everything, I said, because somebody needed to say the obvious. I know, he said. He looked at the steam unspooling off his cup and back at me. But I can at least not break you. I wasn't ready for the sound that came out of me. It was a laugh, but it had borrowed something from a sob. I shook my head, water flinging in a small arc. That your pitch? I will ruin less than the others. And roll now. The corner of his mouth edged toward human. I was aiming for, I'll show you where the floor has its soft spots. Floor doesn't have soft spots, I said automatically. Exactly, he said, and took a careful sip like that was an answer and a joke and a truce. We drifted to sit on the low concrete rim that corrals the gravel. The rain moderated to a fine insistence. It beaded on his forearms and made my knuckles look newly minted. Steam from our cups became its own weather, a small, stubborn fog between us that smelled like burnt beans and plastic hope. Tell me something not in the manual, I said. He considered, eyes cutting to the far bridge and back. If you train an Omega to heat, they'll show you heat. If you train them to hold, they'll show you the world. That's poetic, I said. Do you practice these on interns? I practice them on myself, he said. Bad habit. You cauterize your own bad habits? I asked. When I can, he said. Does it work? Ask me tomorrow, he said, and I laughed again, cleaner this time. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of things still deciding what shape they wanted. I watched rain make small crowns in a puddle near his boot and thought about the shower, and the way the air had trembled when our flames admitted the other one existed. I thought about Kyle's smile and the part of me that wanted to break it just to hear something shatter that wasn't me. I thought about being 20 and waking up with a week missing, and the file that told a story about my body I hadn't written. You ever get tired of being the wall? I asked. He considered. Yes. What then? I go somewhere high and watch the pattern, he said. Or somewhere small and wash the dishes. Dishes? They have rules, he said. Hot, soap, rinse, dry. You can fail at none of those and still feel like you accomplished a thing. It's clean, predictable. You're telling me you go home and do dishes to cope. I'm telling you I respect tasks that end, he said. Not everything gets to. We let the city be our third. Somewhere down on the street a siren sang itself out. A neon sign sputtered and rallied. The river moved the way it always does, patient, pretending to be indifferent to who falls in. You could have told me, I said finally, about the program. About you. I could have, he said, but I don't want you here because of my guilt. I want you here because you chose to be. That's manipulative, I said, but it came out without teeth. It's the only way this works, he said. If you're doing it to prove me wrong or right, you'll run out of road. If you're doing it to build your own, you won't. I turned the cup in my hands until the seam lined up with my thumb. I keep thinking I acted like an idiot last night. You didn't, he said. I stood there shaking like a leaf and argued with a faucet. You regulated, he said. With help. I hate needing help. You hate needing permission, he said. Help you can live with. Stop being right, I said. It's expensive. He didn't apologize. He didn't gloat. He sat with his shoulders squared against the rain, and the city's light making a low halo of the steam off his cup. It would have been easy to call him cold. It would have been truer to call him careful. Okay, I said. It wasn't surrender. It was a door, cracked. Okay, what? He asked. Okay, I'll try it your way, I said. Breath first, boundaries, thermal, regulation. I made a face. Sounds like a smart thermostat. You'll like it, he said dryly. It has buttons. I snorted. Do I get a gold star if I don't boil my own blood? You get a full day without headache, he said. And you get to watch Kyle frown when you refuse to play his game. That last part sounds medicinal, I said. Use as directed, he said. We finished the coffee because we were the kind of people who finished things, even bad coffee. He stood, joints unfolding with the clean economy I'd come to think of as his signature. When he offered me a hand up, it wasn't help disguised as rescue. It was a vector, I took it. We walked back toward the door. At the threshold, I looked out once more at the wet city and the slow river, and the neon that refused to admit it was tired. You can't fix everything, I said again, for both of us. I know, he said. He looked at me not like a project and not like a liability, but like a man with a map and the sense to let me hold the corner. But I won't ruin you. I smiled before I could stop it. It surprised both of us. He didn't smile back, exactly. The muscles conceded a millimeter. For Jayden Hale, that's practically slapstick. Careful, I said. Your face is going to get used to that. He opened the door. Warm air met us, smelling like rubber mats and burnt coffee and the possibility of sleep. Don't get greedy, Reeves. Why not? I asked, stepping through. Apparently I'm an exception. Apparently, he said, and the word carried a small warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. We passed the mirrored wall in the stairwell. It caught us side by side, both of us damp and tired and strangely easy in the hang of our shoulders. In the reflection, I saw the faintest blue thread spark at the edge of his aura, there and gone like a blink. Mine answered, not with a flare, but with a steadying. I laughed, quiet, involuntary. He glanced at me, a question without punctuation. Nothing, I said, just... Coffee's better on the roof. We'll make that a rule, he said. Don't you dare, I said, and let the door swing shut behind us, the hum of the building settling. Around the new shape of a thing that wasn't heat, and wasn't duty, and wasn't finished. Not yet. Not even close. Heat had a weight that morning. It lay over the training yard like a heavy blanket you couldn't kick off. The concrete threw it back at the sky, and the sky threw it right down again. And between the two of them, we were the argument that couldn't leave the room. Dust lifted in lazy ghosts each time a boot scuffed. The crowd, cadets off shift, a handful of instructors, 2 bored observers smelling, faintly of cologne and budget meetings, clustered along the railings. The final test didn't need announcers. It had a reputation, and the kind of hush that reputations earn. Endurance bout. Last evolution of the cycle. Partners rotated until the clock said you were done, or your legs wrote a resignation letter your pride couldn't sign. I bounced on the balls of my feet to convince my knees I believed in them. Wrists taped properly. Breath where Jayden kept telling me to keep it, low, wide, steady like I was building. A house my flame could live in, instead of a paper lantern for it to burn through. Across the circle, Kyle rolled his shoulders with the lazy cruelty of a cat that had never met a window it couldn't knock something off. Smile for me, Reeves, he called. I want something nice to remember when you're eating Matt. I save my smiles for important occasions, I said. Like your first apology, a few laughs fled the shadow of the stands and died quick when instructors glanced that way. The air smelled like hot coin and old rope. Somewhere a siren sang itself into the distance and out. Above us, on the observation platform bolted to the yard's far wall, Jayden stood with his hands behind. His back, the line of him cutting the heat, like a blade that doesn't bother to announce itself. He didn't lean on the rail. He didn't talk to the assistant at his elbow. He watched the yard as if it were a map that would confess its terrain if you stared long enough. The whistle cut. The first pair went at it, Alpha versus Alpha, a contest of similar languages spoken with different accents. The bouts were short by design, a minute apiece, a breath between, reset, new partner. They were also endless by experience. 6 minutes in your lungs is longer than a meeting with a lawyer. When it was my turn, the mat under my bare feet felt like a promise I wasn't sure I'd made. First opponent, a beta with shoulders like a sensible building, and a respectful caution in his eyes. We traded soft power, checks and rechecks, weight shifts and breath traps, like people who recognize that the point of force is often to demonstrate you won't have to use it. I held. He held. The whistle said we'd both passed a test that wasn't aimed at us. By the 3rd rotation, my shirt clung in dark ink patches. By the 5th, my forearms hummed in their own key. The sun found the small wet places on my neck and decided to make them into a philosophy. The crowd moved like a single animal trying to find shade. Kyle stepped into the circle on my 7th bout and smiled the way people do when they've rehearsed the expression in a mirror for an audience of 1. The ref looked at both of us like he was already tired. The The whistle said, "Begin." Kyle opened with something almost courteous, a probing check to my right shoulder, a feint in the left hip, the kind of footwork that says I can dance if you insist. I didn't. He pushed and I redirected. Not with the desperate heat I used to worship, but with the quiet weight Jayden had made me practice until my bones were bored. Kyle faked a stumble. I didn't chase. His mouth tightened, barely. Then he gave up the theater. The second exchange was a storm. He stepped in, used the heel of his palm under my sternum, tried to angle me onto the back foot where the mat eats you. I let the pressure float past the spot it wanted, and found my own center, like a door that opened the right way for once. He didn't like that door. He slammed again. The world narrowed to hands, breath, the heat of another body's heat. The yard's hum went thin. Is that it? He breathed, too soft for the railings. The famous flame? I expected something warmer. Careful, I said. You'll get what you ask for. He did. He just didn't see it yet. Above, metal creaked. Jayden's weight shifting the platform a fraction. He hadn't moved before. The movement was permission I hadn't asked for and didn't need. It still found me. Kyle changed tactic, if you could call doubling down a tactic. He slid a foot behind my ankle and hooked. A sweep we'd been told not to attempt at full speed. His forearm found my rib, where the old ache still sang its selfish lullaby. Pain went hot white and tried to name me. I didn't let it pick the word. Persisting isn't strength, Reeves, Jayden had said on day 2. An echo that didn't ask for credit. No, I'd said. But it's not passivity. Neither applied now. This wasn't about persisting or yielding. It was about not misplacing the fire. If I let it talk first, it would do what it always did. Flare, burn, collapse, leave. Me with ash in my mouth, and the impression of victory without the math to prove it. We broke, reset, closed. The third contact landed wrong on purpose. Kyle's elbow knew exactly where my past lived and introduced itself. The pain that came up wasn't the dignified kind. It was the cheap kind that reminds you you're an animal before you're a man. Heat ripped through my ribs like a match along old paper. The air trembled. Not metaphor. Physics. I felt it in the fine hairs along my forearms, in the way the dust hung for a fraction too long. Not now, I told the flame. Not like that. It didn't care. Flame rarely does when it thinks it's defending you. It leaped up the cage of my ribs and clawed for my throat. Heat in the mouth, heat in the eyes, heat crowding the view until the mat was a white square floating in the middle of brightness. My breath narrowed to a wire. Kyle's grin arrived in a tunnel. On the platform, Jayden's hands left the neat fold at his back. His shoulders angled. The assistant said something I didn't hear. My name landed on the air like a coin dropped in a jar. Kyle saw the change before I could admit it to myself. He leaned in to crowd me, to sell me the lie that I only had 2 options. Explode or break. I made a third. I tried to step out, to let the heat smear along my skin, and find cooler air, to give it the space Jayden had taught me it could have without swallowing the room. Kyle didn't let me go. The illegal contact came as casual as a blink, a short, mean shot under the ribs, a hard bar of a forearm pinning me where no pin was called. My body folded around the pain. The flame roared. Not metaphor, not anymore. A breath shuddered out of me that wasn't air. The strip of space between us boiled. The ref shouted. The crowd pitched forward like an eager mouth. Above us, metal screamed. Jayden was off the platform before the assistant could say his name twice. He didn't vault. He fell with intent, a clean drop to the mat that made the dust jump and the crowd gasp as if gravity had just learned a new word. He hit the ground in a crouch that absorbed the yard, then moved. I didn't see him cross the space so much as see space get out of his way. Kyle's arm came up for a follow. Jayden's hand found his wrist and sent it somewhere else. He didn't hurt him. He re-educated the limb and let it know it could be better. Out, the ref barked, voice high with adrenaline or fear. Hale. Out, Jayden said without looking, and Kale found himself on the wrong side of a line he hadn't seen drawn. Then Jayden turned to me. If he'd touched me then, the story would have been different. He didn't. He stepped into the cage of heat I was making of my own chest, and let his cold flame take up the rest of the space. The air between us went hard and slick like the skin on cooling glass. It wasn't temperature. It was pressure. The kind weather makes when it can't decide between two seasons in 1 hour. Elliot, he said, low, breaking the name into 2 steady stones. Breathe where I taught you. I tried. The first inhale snagged on the old break like barbed wire. The second made it halfway home. The third found the space he'd made in front of me and sat down there. The heat didn't dissipate. It organized. Kyle cursed behind the line some brave assistant was making with his body and a rule sheet. The crowd pressed forward, then thought better of it, the way animals do when they see 2 fires in the same clearing and remember what happened last time. Back up, the ref said, to Jayden, to me, to fate. No one listened. Jayden didn't move closer. He didn't need to. Aura did. It reached the length of a hand without having to become one. Then the world hiccuped. It wasn't a big thing. A stutter in the dust, a ripple in the light. It traveled the short distance between our chests and opened something that hadn't had a door before. Jayden's cold burn met my hot in a seam neither of us had installed deliberately. There was no heat in it and all heat. No light in it and all light. For the second it took to become true, the yard disappeared and there was only the sound of glass deciding whether to shatter or sing. It sang. Briefly. Brightly. White. Shock cracked like a finger snap next to my ear. A flash, not blinding but clarifying. Like the moment your eyes adjust to a room you didn't know you were already in. My knees didn't buckle. My flame did something stranger. It leaned. A thread of blue, his, ran through the gold, mine, and the 2 learned a new color on contact. The ache in my ribs did not vanish. It fell back like a man told his mic is off. The boil along my skin evened into a low simmer that felt indecently like peace. In the far corner of the yard, a water bottle popped its cap from sheer drama. Then the sound came back, all at once. The fans, the mutter, the crowd's breath in one wide inhale. Stop, the ref said, but it wasn't to us. It was to everything else. Jayden's eyes were on mine. They weren't triumphant. They weren't tender. They were focused the way surgeons get when they've found the artery they were worried about, and it's where it should be. He exhaled the smallest fraction, and I felt it under my breastbone. You promised, I heard myself say, not angry yet, not anything yet. The old panic broke the surface like a fish coming for air. You promised don't touch, I said again, the Russian tearing out before the English could get its boots on. You promised not to touch. I didn't, he said, and his voice was soft in a way that had no pity in it. I didn't touch, Elliot. Ia, ine trogol, ito vibral tai. He said it like the truth had always been bilingual. I didn't. This was your choice. I wanted to argue that choice implies a path you saw coming. I wanted to say the door had opened under my feet. The words didn't find me. Something else did. A feeling like the pilot light in my chest, the one I'd been nursing, raw since the shower, had just been given gas with a regulator I could actually read. Jayden, the assistant said, alarm threaded through the syllables. You need to... He swayed. It was nothing. Then it was something. His hand found my shoulder without warning, not as claim, not as dominance. Pure physics, the body asking for a place to be while it remembered how. The touch wasn't pressure. It was weight. I caught it. The crowd made the sound people make when trains miss each other by less than a story allows. Jayden's knees went a notch weaker. I set my feet and bore up, the strange, steady newness in my chest extending, through my clavicles like a brace, and into my hands like understanding. I had the ridiculous thought that this is what a load feels like when it fits. His eyes flicked once. Annoyance, surprise. The gallows humor of a man who hates drama and just met some. Well, he said, very dry. That's inconvenient. Then he was out. Not a swoon. Not theater. A clean drop into a place where even he couldn't practice control. I eased him down with more care than I would have admitted to owning yesterday. The mat took his shoulders. The cold flame of him did not go out. It condensed, a neat ring held close to the bone. The connection between us, Whatever word I'm supposed to use for something that isn't a mark and isn't nothing, didn't snap. It settled. I felt a ribbon of him running along the inside of my ribs, not choking, not choking, not choking. And I repeated it until the words stopped being words and became a measurement I could keep. Back up, the ref said to the crowd, to the assistants, to the idea of this being a spectacle. The board members looked like people who had arrived at a play that refused to honor the program. Taryn's face in the third row telegraphed a novel's worth of commentary in a single, "Oh no." "Instructor Hale?" the medic called, sliding in on the far side. "Pupils responsive?" "Reeves, move. Don't." The syllable came sharper than I meant. I loosened it. "I'm here. I can—" I almost said hold, and that would have been a confession I wasn't ready to sign. Wait. The medic's hands did their honest work. Jayden's pulse told a story the medic liked, strong even, offended at the interruption. Someone put a block under his calves. Someone else shaded his face with a hand because the sun had decided it liked him too much. The assistant kept repeating, "He's fine," in a tone that suggested he was trying to convince time. I kept a palm against Jayden's shoulder, not pressing, just letting the weight. We didn't understand yet decided could rest across both of us for now. The yard's noise receded, until the only thing left was breath moving how breath should move. Inside the shape of me, something blue laced itself through the gold, thin, disciplined, unmistakable. It didn't tell me what to do. It didn't tell me what to be. It steadied. It marked, not ownership, orientation, a compass laid gently on a map and left there because it was useful to both of us. I should have been afraid. I wasn't, not of this. Fear waited at the edge, with a stack of forms ready for me to sign later. Right now, the only thing I could name was the quiet relief of a system that had been overclocked suddenly finding the right voltage. "He's coming around," the medic said, pleased in that professional way that sounds like it's trying not to get attached to outcomes. "Keep the crowd back." Jayden's lashes moved like a man sorting through old files and throwing out what he didn't need. His eyes opened on the wrong angle of sky, then corrected to me. The expression there was not surprise and not pride. It was recognition, clean and light as a new habit. "I told you," he said, voice rough as concrete. "I wouldn't take it." "You didn't," I said, and the answer surprised me with how little resistance it needed. "I did." He blinked once. Approval didn't cross his face. It crossed the air and warmed my fingers through the new thread. The assistant leaned in. "Sir." "Help me up," Jayden said to me, not to the assistant. "I can wait," I said. But my hand was already under his shoulder, the lift easy in a way I hadn't earned before today. He grimaced as the sun remembered it had opinions. We got him sitting. The world applauded in the relieved, uncertain way crowds applaud when they've watched a near miss and want to convince themselves they were never scared. "Close the bout," the ref told someone with a clipboard. "We're done." Kyle stood at the edge of the circle, jaw working as if it had gum and a grudge. His eyes flicked from Jayden's face to my hand on Jayden's shoulder, to the space between us that still hummed like an aftershock. He didn't speak. For once, no one wanted to hear him. Jayden heard anyway. He angled a look that carried no heat and all warning. Kyle looked away first. The board men whispered. The sun pressed. The dust settled in a long, slow confetti. Taryn's thumbs up was obscene with relief. Under my sternum, the ribbon held. Not a chain. Not an order. An agreed-upon line between two fires that had decided, for this breath, for the next, how not to burn down the room. I didn't know what it meant yet. I knew what it wasn't. Not a collar. Not a claim. Not a trick built into a rulebook I hadn't been allowed to read. It was an answer to a question I hadn't let myself ask out loud. What happens if I stop fighting the fire long enough to let it be held? Jayden's weight shifted against my palm, a fraction heavier, and then less so, like gravity had returned what it borrowed. "We'll talk," he said, which meant, not here, not like this. "Yeah," I said, and the word didn't scrape. "We will." The ref declared the test concluded. The platform above us looked oddly far away, like a past life you're not sure you want back. The yard emptied in the orderly chaos of people pretending nothing extraordinary had occurred in front of them because it would be easier to live with if it hadn't. We stayed a moment longer, two small centers in a circle that was already forgetting it had been an arena. Elliot, Jayden said softly, as if checking to see if the name still fit in his mouth. Yeah, breathe, he said, because some rules were worth writing twice. I did. The flame held, low and clean. His did the same. For the first time since I was 20 and woke up with a week missing, I didn't feel like proof or apology. I felt like choice. Morning came on quiet feet. The medical bay liked to pretend it was a chapel at that hour. Low lights, blinds cracked just enough to admit a ribbon of pale sun, the steady congregational murmur of monitors believing in pulse. The room smelled like antiseptic and orange peels. Somebody had decided citrus made healing look deliberate. Jayden lay on the narrow bed, like the bed had been engineered to learn posture from him. Even unconscious, he looked precise. The blue thread steadiness under my sternum stayed. It didn't tug or order. It kept time, a metronome at the edge of breath. I sat in the plastic chair with my elbows on my knees and pretended. I wasn't monitoring his face the way the machine monitored his heart. He woke like someone who refused to rush even that, lashes parting, eyes adjusting, a slow check of surroundings. That would have been clinical if not for the brief, human flicker when his gaze found me first. Reeves, he said, voice roughened with sleep and the insult of collapsing in public. Hale, I answered, and only realized after that my mouth was smiling. He glanced at the monitor, the IV, the bandage on his forearm where the medic had made sure the veins remembered their manners. He breathed once, in and out, and the blue thread in me agreed. Then he looked back, face steady, words simple. If you want to leave, he said, go. I won't hold you. Air did the small surprise thing in my chest it does when the room opens a new door. I had rehearsed a dozen speeches overnight, and they all burned down to ash against 4 words. And, if I stay? I asked. The corner of his mouth softened in a way that could be mistaken for light. Then we learned not to burn. It wasn't a promise of gentleness. It was better, a promise of work. I nodded. Once. Felt the yes land in the ribs that used to be all argument. The medic appeared with the cheerful tyranny of morning routine. Vitals are excellent, she announced, as if she'd taken it personally. Hale, you faint pretty. Reeves, stop hovering like a lamp. I'm providing ambiance, I said. You're providing carbon dioxide, she corrected. Out. Both of you. Slowly. We obeyed, because people with stethoscopes wield a certain power. In the hallway the building breathed, the far hum of the training fans, voices trading, schedules, the scent of coffee drifting in from a break room like a rumor worth chasing. Jayden walked without theatrics, each step a memo to gravity that their relationship remained professional. Today's final quals, I said, not a question. I'll observe, he said, which meant, I'll let you prove nothing to me and everything to yourself. The yard hadn't forgiven the heat for yesterday, it just negotiated better terms. Sun came in kinder, a high gloss instead of a hammer. The crowd was smaller, quieter. Taryn found my shoulder with a fast squeeze and didn't say the 1,000 things in his eyes. Kyle was present and remarkably unremarkable, his face practicing the art of neutrality. We formed the line. I felt the newness inside me like a tool I didn't have to show to know I owned. Breath low. Held wide. Flame where it belonged, not in my throat, not in my hands, not pretending to be proof. Banked in the good place, ready to work. Begin, the ref said. The drills weren't different. I was. Weight shifts that used to need anger took only attention. Checks that used to need force took only alignment. When pressure came, I gave it the wall that didn't move. When speed came, I introduced it to space. No flare. No flare. My body learned the map, and for once, didn't set it on fire to prove it existed. Between rotations, I could feel Jayden on the platform the way you feel a city at your back, present, not pressing. He didn't call out corrections. He didn't glare approval. He watched the work. The thread between us held quietly, like 2 instruments tuned to the same pitch in different hands. On the last pass, I exhaled into a balance point I used to miss and watched it hold. People clapped. The decent, unshowy kind. I stepped off the mat and didn't look up until I'd found water and the ground had confirmed we were still friends. When I did glance, Jayden's face carried nothing of the drama yesterday had tried to write on it, but the faintest shift sat at the edge of his eyes, like a pilot light acknowledging that the oven had listened. "Nice," Taryn said, appearing with a towel like a magician. Understated. I cried a little. Inside. "Don't leak on the mat," I told him. "It's slippery enough." He bumped me with his shoulder. "Coffee. Mandatory." We ended up 2 blocks away at a narrow cafe that specialized in optimism and toast, the window fogged in perfect ovals where cups had been before. The city was busy becoming daytime, buses exhaling, a kid dragging a cello case wider than his hope, someone laughing into a phone about a dog that refused to go outside because puddles existed. The barista wrote our names wrong on purpose to flirt with failure. We had a corner table. Sun warmed the wood. The place smelled like fresh bread and the kind of coffee that forgives bad nights if you drink it slowly. "You still mad?" Jayden asked, as if we were counting inventory and he needed accurate numbers. "Yes," I said, "because the body doesn't stop cataloging insult just because the heart didn't break. And I still want coffee." His mouth considered a smile and filed a notice of intent. "Acceptable." We drank. The thread hummed, not in the romantic way people tell stories about, but in the competent way foundations hum when the wind tests a building and the building remembers what it's for. "You did well," he said eventually. "I did honest," I said. "Well, is a label someone else gets to pin? Then I'll pin it anyway," he said, stubborn in a way that didn't bruise. Silence again, but clean this time. I let my shoulders drop the 2 millimeters they'd been stealing from my neck since yesterday. Outside, a bus sighed with theatrical relief. Inside, a plate of lemon cake made questionable promises from the display case. I was thinking. I started, and immediately heard the sirens inside my own head. We could take a... I meant... break. I meant... breather. I meant a walk around the block so the residual adrenaline could shake hands with the new normal. My mouth did not care. It chose violence. "Date," I finished, and stared at the table as if it had asked for this. Jayden didn't drop the cup. He didn't blink fast. He set it down with the exact care he used on rules and knives. "You're asking me out," he said. Not a question, just a reality check spoken like a man confirming coordinates. "I'm inviting you to shut up and drink," I blurted, my ears very hot, which was rich coming from someone who'd just passed a test about not boiling. I mean, coffee, more coffee, a break, not a date. He let the moment sit until the humiliation did its work, and then relaxed its grip. "All right," he said, the word wearing a small smile you could almost see. "But I'm still going to make you want it." I pressed my lips together to stop a laugh that was going to be too loud for a cafe this size. It escaped anyway, a quick, unarmed thing, and the barista looked up from drawing a swan in milk and gave us a thumbs up, for reasons known only to the god of steam wands. We split the lemon cake like a treaty. Taryn texted a string of fireworks emojis and the words, "You up?" because he's a menace. I texted back a picture of the cake with no caption. He sent 30 hearts and a picture of a dog that did not want puddles. "Next cycle starts Monday," Jayden said. Business-like even in a booth that had seen worse business. "You'll train the same. Breath first." "Boundaries," I said. "Thermal regulation," he said. "You and your buttons," I muttered. He finally smiled properly. It was small, precise, and devastating if you cared about such things. Which apparently I did. The thread between us brightened, a low blue braided through gold the way rivers meet without violence if the banks are right. Outside, the city finished waking. Somebody in a suit ran for a crosswalk and won. The kid with the cello case found an adult who took the other handle. Sun burned the edge off the wet and left everything glossy. "You okay?" Jayden asked, and his voice had more air in it than yesterday, like permission let it. "I'm good," I said, amazed to hear the truth land without wobble. "Not fine. Good. Keep it that way," he said. "I intend to," I said. "With help. You hate permission," he reminded me. "I do," I said. Help I can live with. We finished our coffee slowly, on purpose. When we stood, our shoulders found the same height without trying. The door chimed us back onto the street, and the city accepted us the way cities do, indifferently, which felt like freedom. As we walked toward the center, the thread held without insistence, a quiet compass tucked under the breastbone. Not a collar, not a command. Something chosen, and therefore strong. You still mad? He asked again at the corner. Because he's thorough. Yes, I said. In useful ways. Good, he said. Anger has assignments now. Coffee too, I said. And dates. Careful, he said, eyes warm. Your face will get used to that. Don't get greedy, instructor, I said, stealing his line. He didn't look at me when he answered. He looked ahead, like a man reading a map he was content not to control. Apparently, he said, I don't have to be. The day widened. The heat was only warmth, and for once, the fire in me didn't ask to prove anything. It asked to stay.